Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Sam Clark. Welcome to the event tonight. We are going to be talking about psychology at Heriot-Watt University. Some little things to think about at the start. First of all, this is being recorded, the session is being recorded and it will be put up onto the university web pages afterwards. Don't worry though, we are just recording what's on the screen. We're not going to be recording any audience participation, it'll just be what's on the screen. Secondly, if you'd like to ask questions this evening, then we would encourage you to type your questions into the chat facility. There is no question too small or too great. The questions will go to the moderators of the event. They won't be seen by the audience, so don't worry if you want to ask something you feel like is a little bit silly, because it can go in the chat and it'll go to us. Now we try to answer all of questions throughout this event, and anything that we don't answer this evening, then we'll try and answer at a later stage and get in touch with you. It's not just me talking tonight, it's also Dan Hale, who's an Associate Professor in Psychology at Heriot-Watt, Rachel Whittington, who's a Learning Advisor and Liaison Librarian, and Pat Reid, who is the College and Widening Access Officer. So what we're going to cover this evening is I'll give you a little bit of an introduction into Heriot-Watt University and into our teaching and learning. I'll then pass on to Dan, who's going to talk more specifically about psychology at Heriot-Watt and hopefully inspire you. I'll then pass on to Rachel, who's going to be coming in talking about that transition from college to university and the different styles of learning and the support that the university has to help you. And finally, if you're really inspired by what Dan and Rachel have said this evening and you'd like to apply and come and study psychology at Heriot-Watt, then Pat will be talking about specifics about entry requirements and how to apply. Now, as I said before, we will be trying to answer questions throughout the evening, but we'll also have a question and answer at the end. So if anyone has any questions, type them into the chat. Okay, so let's get started. A little bit about Heriot-Watt. So Heriot-Watt University was established in 1821, so it's a pretty old, well-established university, but you probably wouldn't know that by going to any of our campuses, as our campuses are all purpose built and quite new, with lots of exciting state-of-the-art technologies and facilities. So don't think that even though it was established in 1821 that it's going to be sort of old and crumbly and dusty. It's absolutely not. It's very state-of-the-art with some great facilities. The university is a specialist institution with really strong industry links, so lots of really good links with employers, and we have over 30,000 students worldwide. So very diverse cohort of students from lots of different backgrounds, and one of the really cool things about Heriot-Watt is students come from all over the world. So you get to meet people from lots of different places with lots of different experience. We have excellent graduate prospects. So Heriot-Watt is one of the best places in Scotland for starting salaries. So when you come to Heriot-Watt, you graduate and then you go into employer. We have highest sort of starting salaries in those employers. So it's a good starting point for your career. Heriot-Watt has over 100 partner institutions around the world and 5 purpose-built campuses. So if I move on to the next slide, you can see where they are. We have a small postgraduate community in Orkney, focusing mainly on island technologies. We've got a textiles campus, textiles and design in Galashiels, and Edinburgh is our main UK campus, and that's where the psychology degree is based. And then we also have Dubai and Malaysia campuses as well. So it is truly global. So with that and the 100 partners around the world, it is really quite an exciting university to be part of. I won't go too much into psychology just now, because hopefully Dan will be able to tell us a little bit more about that later on. But psychology is based within the School of Social Sciences, which is known as SOS, and we have 2 degrees. where you can study psychology, the BSc Hons in psychology, and the BSc Hons psychology with management. Both of these courses are accredited by the British Psychological Society, BPS, and that is a great accreditation because it's required for anybody who wishes to pursue a career as a professional psychologist. So it's good to get it accredited. Our teaching at Heriot-Watt University might be slightly different from what you've experienced previously in college. So we have 2 10-week terms per year. So you get a big holiday in the summer and a big holiday at Christmas, and then the 2 terms in between. The contact hours vary depending on course. So some courses you have lots of contact time, others not so much. And there's a range of teaching styles and environments. So lectures tend to be typically larger groups where you kind of go and you're watching a lecture, either lecture or do something. Whereas tutorials, seminars, labs, workshops, they tend to be smaller groups where maybe there's more of a practical focus and there's more discussions and kind of more student-led type study. At the moment, during COVID, it's obviously very important that we have a virtual learning environment, Vision. So most of our study is blended learning, so that's some online and some face-to-face. And the My HWU Student Portal app is basically like a one-stop shop for all your student needs, and that's really handy having everything in the one place. So you know you don't have that kind of like worry when you go to university, you're not really sure what services are available. Everything's in the app, which makes it nice and handy. For learning, again, there might be some differences between college and university, and Rachel will be able to explain a bit more about this later on. But university learning tends to be less directed with fewer timetable hours. So you might maybe have 3 or 4 contact lectures a week, but then most of the study you'll be doing at your own time outside of that. You have a full responsibility for your own learning. It can be quite daunting if this is something that you've not done previously, but there's lots of support out there to help you with that transition and help you with that change. So don't worry about it, and Rachel will be able to tell us a little bit more about that later on. The university, as I said before, is absolutely global, and there's a whole range of opportunities available. So a lot of people probably know that if you study French at university, then you tend to go to a French-speaking school, a French-speaking country, to learn more about French. But at Heriot-Watt, you can do that in any subject. So lots of different opportunities to be able to go abroad and meet people and students from lots of different cultures and countries. We have the inter-campus transfer and exchanges with partner institutions. So we've got Malaysia and Dubai, and then we've got, of course, 100 partner institutions all around the world. Even if you don't go to those campuses or those places, you can still potentially have interaction with those students. So it's a really diverse place to work and study. Well-being is absolutely crucial, of course, to any student journey. At Heriot-Watt, we have personal tutors, so you'll be assigned a personal tutor to help you with your studies and with your journey. There's a counselling service. Careers and Graduate Futures is all about that step from university into whatever you do next, but be that further postgraduate education or employment. We have the disability service, so that's a really key one. If anybody out there is using the disability service at the moment in their college studies, then don't worry, because Heriot-Watt can often replicate the same support. So for example, if you were getting extra time in exams or a scribe, then Heriot-Watt have those services too. And what we would encourage you to do is, if you are using the disability services or you think you might need to use them, then we would get you to either put it in your UCAS application or to email us, and Pat will be able to tell you at the end the contact details that you need. But don't worry, because Heriot-Watt often can replicate the support that you've already been getting. Student success advisors are really cool because they are recent graduates. So instead of just talking to lecturers who have been in the job for 40+ years and can't even remember what it's like to be a student, our student success advisors are people who graduated within the university in the last few years, so they remember what it's like to be at university and to be a student, and they can help you and support you through your journey. We also have medical practice on campus, both a doctor's and a dentist, and also multi-faith chaplaincy. The university also has a focus on sport, so we have lots of different sports that you can try. It doesn't matter if you're a professional sports level or whether you just want to try and get fit and do something new and try something new. Then there's lots of opportunities to be involved in sport with like really top facilities. So the Odeum in Edinburgh is the Scotland's Sports Performance Centre, and it is really top facilities for sport. Finally, a little bit on accommodation. So lots of universities offer accommodation guarantee in the first year of study, but Heriot-Watt is slightly different because they offer an accommodation guarantee in your first year of study. So what that means is if you're studying an HNC or an HND or a swap course at college, and you're looking to join Heriot-Watt in either the second or third year of the degree programme, then we would still guarantee you accommodation because it would be your first year of study. So that's really quite an exciting unique thing about Heriot-Watt. Okay, so that was a very quick sort of chat about the sorts of services and facilities we have at Heriot-Watt. But what I'm going to do in a few moments is hand over to Dr. Dan Hale, and hopefully Dan will be able to tell us a little bit more about studying psychology at Heriot-Watt. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my slides just now, and we'll pass over to Dan.
Okay, excuse me. Oh, I haven't been speaking enough this evening. Hi, everybody, and thanks, Sam, for the introduction. Some of what I have to say might overlap somewhat, but I'll try to keep the focus more on the psychology department. So I'll move you over to my slides. Hopefully you're seeing that. All right, good, and I'll launch right in. Good. Okay, so psychology at Heriot-Watt. Well, we've already got a little bit of history from Sam, and as she mentioned, it's a very old university in some ways. In fact, it started off as I think a mechanics institute or something similar to that, a working man's institute, where people who are men working in trades could also learn about science and technology. And obviously, the university has changed drastically since that reasonably humble beginning. So yeah, almost 200 years of history. Sam also touched upon our two campuses, and actually this is something that has direct relevance even if you decide to be an Edinburgh student, because as mentioned previously, it's quite straightforward to do an exchange with these two campuses, and indeed there are other universities which we have agreements, but it's very straightforward. And in fact, in psychology, we work together as an international teaching team. So you're literally, if you were to go on exchange to either of those places, you're getting the same thing, right? So we work together. So it's not like you're going on an exchange to a different university and you can kind of seamlessly bounce between these campuses, with some exceptions in later years. I say bounce, you can go once and come back. But in psychology, we have certain rules about not going in the last semester of third year or in fourth year to do with our dissertation. But there's real opportunities for travel in a sort of seamless way. So Heriot-Watt as I'm sure you've discovered if you're researching universities, there's millions of these tables, but Heriot-Watt does reasonably well in a lot of the rankings, depending on the rankings that you look at. Lots of different ones, but Heriot-Watt seems to do well in most or all of them. And not only that, but Heriot-Watt is moving up in the world, right? So you can see that in the world university rankings up, 13 spaces, which isn't too bad. Around 300s when you consider all the universities in the world. We're doing okay at Heriot-Watt, and hopefully moving further up that list as well as many others. Which takes us right into psychology, which is what I said I was interested in doing. And when talking about psychology, you might ask, what sort of questions are psychologists or people who study people who study psychology interested in? And that's an ever-changing set of topics that we're interested in. So you can see here that one study, in fact, there's a very famous study in social psychology. It's called the Asch Conformity Study. And this study involved participants looking at that line on the left. Now, anyone can clearly see that that's the same length as line B, but what Asch found was that when he got people who were in on the experiment to pretend that it was another line, for example, A or C, people began to doubt their senses and would go along with those other lines. In fact, I'm lying to you right now. Of course, B is not the correct answer, it's C, but people could be led, maybe not to believe, but at least to behave in ways that showed that they were conforming to what other people involved in the experiment, or who they thought were participants just like them, would answer. So that's kind of interesting. And actually, that study and others in social psychology teach us a lot about group behavior, about why we behave in certain ways, have been used to explain things that are far more significant and important than the length of lines, things like politics or even atrocities that have been committed. Why do people go along with such things? And maybe it's something to do with our social influences. So that's where, or one direction that psychology has come from. We're still interested in such questions. But another question related to social psychology, the psychology of groups and interacting, is about face recognition, right? So this is more about perception. For example, we're better at recognizing faces from people within our own group. And of course, group can be defined in all sorts of different ways. But what research has shown reasonably convincingly is that we can distinguish between faces within our own group better than other groups. And that has really important implications for maybe racism and discrimination. So interesting, and also just the way that we interact or see other people. And in terms of the future, well, it's not really the future because these are the things that we're thinking about now, but it's emotions in robots. I mean, how we interact with non-human things, machines like robots, how maybe robots display their emotions, if not necessarily experience emotions. So this is obviously, not obviously, but it is important in terms of our future as humans, and robots have certain applications where them being able to display human-like traits, such as displaying emotions, might be useful, right? So that's one challenge in psychology, and you can see a few listed along the bottom there, things relating to behavioral effect on climate change. We know that our behavior is really important for the environment, right? So how do we convince people of the risks? How do we get them to maybe change their behavior? Similarly, you can talk about health risk behaviors, the types of behaviors that we maybe by and large know are not really good for us, and yet we engage in them anyway. This is something that's really of interest to me. I have an interest in cannabis use, right? Particularly in adolescence. So what are the factors that lead young people to engage in such risk behaviors? And obviously these things aren't merely there to study for our own interest. There's applications for these things. You can also talk about health in an aging population. I've already referred to maybe politics. These are interesting times for understanding our own biases and the information that is presented to us and how we interpret it. We don't come to information as, unbiased observers. We bring our own biases. In fact, the information that's presented to us is often skewed and biased in a particular way. So these have real world applications. It's not merely for considering in the confines of our offices or classroom. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the types of things that psychology is interested in, or psychologists are interested in. But when you consider that psychology is the study of basically people, human behavior, and thought and emotion, you begin to see how vast it is. It's really, in some ways, the study of everything that has to do with humans, at least, which is a lot of things. So a lot of area for maneuver, room for maneuver, depending on what your particular interests might be. So in that spirit, I'll take you through a quick quiz about psychology, talking about some of the maybe myths or potentially truths that maybe you've heard in the past. So let's start with this one. We use only 10% of our brain. I'll give you a moment to consider that. Would we say that's true or false? That's certainly something I recall hearing. I don't know what your immediate thoughts are, but that's false. Again, that's an entirely unsubstantiated claim, and I remember hearing similar ones about Einstein used 25% of his brain, which explains his intelligence. No, you're using every single part of your brain all the time. There's always neural activity happening. If you put yourself or somebody else in a brain scanning type machine, an EEG, fMRI, then you can see that there's always activity. And in fact, your brain is using a disproportionate amount of energy. So it only accounts for 3% of body weight, as you can see here. It consumes about 20% of our energy. So yeah, you're using your brain all the time, all of it. There is brain localization, specialization. Certain parts of your brain are more specialized to a certain extent for certain tasks, but that doesn't mean that they're just sitting idly by when you're not engaged in those tasks. They're still sort of taking over and active in particular ways. So that one's false. All right, damage on the left side of the brain is often associated with problems in speech and language. True or false? That one is true. It's not certain damage to the left side of. This is a case of localization or specialization that I was referring to earlier. Speech and language centers are located on the left side of your brain, which is not to say that people who experience brain damage completely lose their ability to speak. In fact, especially if brain damage occurs when you're younger, you have certain flexibility. Your brain is, we use the term plastic, so can sort of bounce back from such things to a certain extent. And it's not true that all your speech centers are only on the left side of your brain, but they are by and large on that side. So damage there does interfere with your ability to speak and use language, right? So that one is true. And there's lots of instances of specialization to a certain extent, although it's probably really not great to talk about a speech center. It's probably speech centers. Lots of different parts of your brain are required to use language, and you can think of even how the visual parts of your brain are important there, because we often engage with language in a visual way. So it's more spread out than maybe we're often led to believe, but there are parts of your brain that are specialized to a certain extent, and damage there is problematic for those functions. All right, now we're getting into a couple questions that are closer to my area of expertise. Money can't buy happiness. We hear that a lot. Sounds like a philosophical statement rather than maybe a psychological one. But of course, when we're talking about happiness, that's an element of, part of human condition, emotion, maybe even mental health. So this is something that psychology is interested in. Well, that's sort of false. Money can't buy happiness. Money can buy happiness to a certain extent. But what this graph is basically showing you is that as you make more and more money, the amount that your negative emotions, which is one measure of happiness, you could argue, the amount that your negative emotions decrease gets close to zero. Once you're making about, in UK money, 157,000, that's your family income, then it's not contributing that much to your well-being, you could say, or to reducing your negative emotion. That's quite a lot of money, I would argue. So I think most of us, I'm going to put forward, don't make quite that much. So we could all earn a bit more money and improve our life. But you can see that the percentages here are quite low. So there's certainly many other factors, probably many that are more important than money. And finally, this is specifically what I'm researching right now. Cannabis use is associated with poor mental health. True or false? I'll give you a second to think. That's true, but you do have to pay attention to how that question was worded, because I did specifically ask in that question about the association, and it's definitely true. Most data seems to suggest that cannabis users have poor mental health. But does that mean cannabis use causes poor mental health? No, not necessarily. It could be that people with poor mental health gravitate toward cannabis, or there could be other factors like deprivation that lead to poor mental health. So poverty, for example, leads to poor mental health, and maybe illicit drug use, for example. So this is an important point that will be hammered home if you come to take psychology here at Heriot-Watt, or indeed anywhere, that correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because things are associated with each other, that doesn't tell you necessarily much about what is causing what. Okay, so hopefully that got you a little bit excited about psychology, and there's lots of different areas that you can follow within this discipline. 5 things about psychology at Heriot-Watt, some of which Sam touched upon. We're BPS accredited. Indeed, most, if not all, psychology programs in this country will be, so I wouldn't call that particularly unique, but it is important. Definitely supportive staff, and we've already touched upon some of the support networks, and I think it's something that Heriot-Watt prides itself on. Also a high staff-student ratio, so you can be assured of a certain amount of personal attention. We've already touched upon the personal tutor system, which is a really great resource. There's lots of experimental labs, different types of equipment. We have, for example, a driving simulator. We have, brain scanning equipment. Lots of different types of facilities. Most studies these days are happening online, as I'm sure you can appreciate. When you're doing students these days who are doing their dissertation aren't making a lot of use of these labs, but hopefully in time this is something that will become important again. We also have a flexible program structure. I'll hold that thought because I want to show you what the program looks like in a minute. And another very unique, I would say, element of psychology at Heriot-Watt is the VRA scheme, the Voluntary Research Assistant Scheme. So it gives you the opportunity to work with researchers here at Heriot-Watt, or maybe in industry, to engage in ongoing research and get some experience in research, and maybe get a taste for it and see whether that's something you want to pursue, or at least something nice that you can put on your CV. So there's lots of different opportunities, I hope that you can see already, to take psychology where you want to go with it. These are the general areas that we work in within psychology. These are very broad, as you'd probably expect, and they're certainly overlapping. Myself, for example, I'm interested in lifespan health. You probably could already tell based on my interest in happiness and health risk behaviors, but I'm also interested in brain and cognition, which is a fancy way of saying thinking, and indeed environment and work and society and so on. So these things are incredibly, I won't say incredibly, they're very broad, and they overlap to a certain extent, which again shows the diversity of what we're doing in the department, and also you can, as a student, can fit within that diversity and pursue your own interests. I've alluded to the fact that all lecturers are active in research, and this shows you a little bit about some of the plaudits we've received as a research institution, right? So the research exercise keeps changing framework, I believe. It's moved up 16 places. So another area where we're good and improving. Psychology indeed is Heriot-Watt's most improved unit of assessment, and I can tell you from within that's something that we want to build on. We're not resting on our laurels. We do want to keep moving forward. And in terms of impact, I've already suggested, and hopefully you're convinced, that psychology isn't just for the lab. It's for society and politics, and how we interact and how we improve people's health and so on. And that's something that we as a department are pretty good at, making sure that we have impactful, relevant research. So let's talk quickly about two of these degrees. I'm cognizant of time, so I won't labor any of these points. In fact, I won't talk too much at all about entry requirements because I know that's something that's coming up a little bit later. You can take a quick glance at this, but this is something that we'll certainly come back to. And I know often people have different backgrounds that aren't necessarily covered in this slide. So we're happy to take questions about that. If you don't fit neatly within these qualifications, there might still be something that will work out for you. Okay, so we have two programs, psychology, or regular straight psychology you could call that, and we have psychology with management. I understand that a lot of people who will be watching this will enter in level 2, but it's still useful to see what's happening in level 1. You can see that in these first 2 years, it's fairly introductory, it's pretty broad, and in fact, you don't have too many or any options in terms of which psychology courses you take. That does come later, but you do have options in terms of languages, science, or management, so you can fill out your schedule in a way that works for you and works with your interests. You can see here that it gets a little bit more specific, more in-depth into particular topics, and hopefully you can see a lot of those psychological options which you fill your schedule up with in later years. So again, whatever you're interested in, hopefully, well, there will be a course that covers some of it, and so you can decide what you want to pursue based on what you've learned earlier in your degree. Psychology with management, as the name implies, is psychology, but with more management options, right? So rather than the options that you have, some of those are automatically filled in with some management courses, but you still have options of language and biology and indeed other management options. And rather than only psychology options, you also have management options, which you can choose as you go forward into year 3 and 4. So not vastly dissimilar, and it's even possible in practice that somebody who's just taking the BSc psychology has a course load that looks almost identical to somebody with management, but it's up to you to decide which of these pathways sort of fits with your goals and interests. And very briefly, this is what it would look like in practice to be studying at Heriot-Watt. Other universities do things in slightly different ways, but as you could already see from the slides I've shown, you have 4 modules, or you can call them courses. We call them courses mostly in psychology per semester. So you take 4 in the first semester, 4 in the next one. You have to pass them all to move on to the next year. And you can also get a sense of what the workload ought to be, but you can pretty much think of a degree, a full-time degree, as similar in terms of number of hours to maybe a full-time working week, 35 or 40 hours. Where do our graduates end up? Well, all sorts of places, possibly within psychology, staying within that area specifically, and there's lots of areas of psychology. You can see them on the right, but people go into other areas, business, marketing, hence the emphasis on management in our degrees, maybe teaching, lots of areas of research, not just academic or psychology research, support work. In fact, many people leave our undergraduate programs and stay at Heriot-Watt to take a master's in business psychology or go on to other master's degrees at other universities. So I think one nice thing about psychology is because of its breadth, it allows you to keep a lot of options open for you in the future, not just psychology. All right, I've touched upon some of the, well, and so has Sam, some of the exchange options that you have in the different campuses that we have. So that's a nice opportunity that a lot of people take advantage of. And finally, what I want to talk about is the dissertation projects, which you will undertake in your 3rd and 4th year. And we do have a wide range of expertise within the department. So we feel that we can supervise really any sort of most projects that you would want to propose, and we have the facilities to do them. So this is another way of emphasizing that diversity in terms of topic. Wherever you want to take it, hopefully that's something that I would suggest that we can support you with. And this is the VRA scheme and some of the different opportunities that people have taken up in terms of working with us or even outside of the department on research and pursuing those interests. Psychology Society is they're a fun bunch, and they're really supportive. In fact, they've just set up a new scheme whereby new students can get support and advice from older, crusty old 3rd years and 4th years. So they're really active, and they're a nice social group. Maybe less so this year, or they've had to find other ways of pursuing their social interests. But again, hopefully they'll be back to their old. They're still trying to stay active this year, I know, and things will return to normalcy one day, although it's hard to believe now. That's all I want to say. Hopefully that paints a bit of a picture of the types of opportunities. There are lots of opportunities in terms of, making the degree your own, making those 3 or 4 years at Heriot-Watt what you want them to be in terms of your career, your education, and your social opportunities. So I'll sign off there.
Thanks very much, Dan. It's Pat here, just in the background. Just got a couple of questions that have come in for you, if that's okay, just to go through. There's 1 or 2 about entry requirements, which I think I'll mostly answer in a bit when I come onto my presentation, but somebody asking a little bit more about the study abroad opportunities. So the specific question is around if you choose to go abroad or you choose to go to either one of the other Heriot-Watt campuses or another partner university, do you still get that BPS accreditation? And is psychology available at places like Dubai for the Heriot-Watt campuses?
Absolutely, yes. And certainly in Dubai and Malaysia, as I've said, they're teaching literally the same thing and the same classes, with certain exceptions. There may be slightly different choices or fewer choices. But if you go there, you're getting, the idea is that you're getting the exact, or not exact, but a similar experience, certainly very similar in terms of the types of teaching that you get. Even the slides are by and large the same. So it really is seamless. When you come back from those places, you've had a very similar academic experience to the students in Edinburgh, albeit with a different group of people at a different campus, and getting that international flavor to things. But it's it really is designed to be seamless. When you take advantage of other opportunities, other institutions, yes, still BPS accredited, absolutely, but different arrangements. You might take different courses there that we don't offer necessarily at Heriot-Watt, so you would probably get a different experience in terms of the courses that you take than you would if you stayed at Heriot-Watt. But you're still, I would suggest that you're still going to come back because you can take different options in 3rd and 4th year. You're still going to be prepared for what's coming at you next, and you'll still be entitled to that accreditation.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Dan. I'll hand you back over to Sam just now.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Dan. That was really exciting. It's obvious that there's some really fantastic research and some opportunities within psychology at Heriot-Watt. So thank you very much. If we do get any further questions for Dan, we can make sure we can get in touch with Dan and get the answer to you at a later date. So, and
my email address is there, so
perfect. Thank you very much, Dan. Brilliant. Cheers. Okay, so we'll move on now. I will introduce Rachel Whittington. Rachel is going to talk a little bit about the transition from college to university and the sorts of support and differences in study skills and that sort of thing. So I'll hand over to Rachel now.
Hi everyone, hope you're all safe and well wherever you are. Just trying to share my screen. There we go. There we go. So hopefully now you can all see my slides as well. So yes, thank you for the introduction. Like I say, my name is Rachel Whittington. I'm a learning advisor and liaison librarian based normally at the Edinburgh campus. And I'm going to talk a little bit about we've already talked about it quite a bit, I think, but some of the differences between studying at college and studying at university, basically what's expected when you're studying at university, and then go over a few kind of tips and advice for studying, which I tell all students, and then talk about kind of the support for studying that's available at Heriot-Watt. So first of all, studying at university, what's expected? It's very much an emphasis on this independent learning. Classes act as a bit of a roadmap for you. So they give you a bit of direction, they show you where to start, they tell you about some of the the key areas, the key researchers, the key information for certain subjects, but then you'll be expected to go off, research, find your own material as well. But as we say, we're aware that this is a potentially quite a different way of studying than you might be used to. And so you're not just kind of thrown into this expected to know what you're doing. You know, there's a huge amount of support available at Heriot-Watt for this, both on the kind of study skills side, which is very much where I'm focused, and also on the well-being side, which we've also already talked about, you know, with the student success advisors and counselling services, well-being services, etc. And when you're kind of writing at university, the emphasis for a lot of your assignments is going to be providing informed opinions using kind of authoritative and appropriate information sources, and your answers and your writing and your work will demonstrate originality. Now, demonstrating originality doesn't necessarily just mean that you have to be the first person ever to have come up with something. You know, for your finding a project or something, that might be the case. But what we mean when we say demonstrate originality is that you can come to your own conclusions about something, that you can look at this authoritative and appropriate information sources, look at that evidence, use that information, assess kind of whether or not it's the positive aspects and the negative aspects of it, and use that to inform your opinion, to come to your own conclusion about it. So when you're studying, to kind of help with this, and also this will help hopefully now as well as a student, no matter what you're doing, but it's especially important as a university student. My 5 kind of top tips for studying at university is 1, to spread the work out over the week. So don't just focus on one topic in a 5-hour session and then think you're done with it. Spend an hour on it each day or something. This is because, you know, your brain tends to remember things much more clearly if it's repeated. If you do something with it and then you don't touch it again for a long time, the mental pathways that you've built up for the information are more likely to degrade much more quickly. So by repeating and repeatedly using the information, you really strengthen that knowledge base. Of course, we don't always have lots of time throughout the week. You know, we have lots of commitments, lots of different things that we want to do, and we absolutely don't. And I absolutely, you know, will never ever advocate for working 24/7. So for committing all of your time in a day or in the week just to studying and just to working. You know, you need to do the fun things. You need to have breaks. and breaks are a huge important part of learning as well. So one thing that you can do is something called the Pomodoro technique, and that is where you basically set a timer for 30 minutes, work solidly on something for that 30 minutes, and then when the timer goes off, you take a break. You get up or go somewhere to get a glass of water, or you just take your mind off the work for a bit, do something else, and then switch back onto working. It's Pomodoro, I think, is Italian for tomato, and it's based after, it's named after this, the kind of tomato oven egg timer things that you get, hence the lovely cartoon version picture of a tomato timer there. And to make the most out of those kind of short bursts of studying, the 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, really set that timer for kind of whatever you feel your attention span works best for. If your attention span only works for 15 minutes, set the timer for 15 minutes. It's whatever works for you. But to really make the most of that, you need to have an idea before that quick burst of studying starts on what you're going to focus on. So this is where we recommend you set yourself SMART goals, either, like I say, for those short bursts of studying, set yourself SMART goals for your day, for your week, for your month, semester, however you want to organize your time. And SMART goals are goals that are specific. So they're on a particular thing that's, that's very concrete, what you're trying to get out of it. They're measurable, so you know that you've achieved it. They are achievable as well. They are kind of realistic for the amount of time that you've got, the other kind of things that that you need to work on. They're relevant kind of to your overall kind of study, personal or career goals and ambitions. And they're timely. They have a set time limit in which they're going to be done in. So, for example, if I was to say tomorrow I am going to spend an hour reading 5 journal articles, that is an example of a SMART goal, because I've been very specific about what I'm going to get done. I can tell if I've achieved it. I can tell if I've read 5 articles or not. For me, I think that's kind of realistic, that's achievable for what I can do. It'd be relevant for kind of my study assignment goals, and it's timely. I've set a specific time limit on it. And as well, when you're deciding kind of what to study, use a variety of study methods. Mix it up rather than just reading and taking notes in kind of a linear list fashion. Maybe take those notes and turn them into a pattern diagram or a mind map. Maybe record yourself reading notes out and listen to them later on. Talk through your study material with other people, or to an inanimate object as well. There's a thing in programming called rubber duck debugging, where computer programmers, if they've encountered a problem in their code, they will sit with an inanimate object. So that the original idea was a rubber duck, but it could be anything. It could be a plant. It could be the family pet. It could be anything. And basically sit and explain what the program is supposed to do, and then explain it line by line. And then you can kind of see, it helps open up pathways to kind of see the problem from a different perspective. So if you're struggling with something, just doing that, trying to explain it, can really help. So that's where I come on to, talking about the work, like say to other people, whether or not they're studying what you're studying or studying something else, or if it's talking to an inanimate object. So, for example, I've got a little chimpanzee called Darwin on my desk, and he's my rubber duck for that. So now I just want to talk about the support that is available at Heriot-Watt. So what I do as part of my role, and also a little bit about what the other departments do as well. And like I say, we've so as a liaison part of my role, each school has a liaison librarian, and we help with finding that high quality information for your assignments. So there's a online library catalogue called Discovery, which searches physical books and journal articles, So physical books and journals that we have across all of our campuses, but also electronic journal articles as well. And we also have individual databases. So as a liaison librarian, we give you advice on the best ways, the best places to search to find the information that's relevant for your assignments, and to evaluate information sources to make sure that they are the high quality that's needed for your assignments. Also in writing at university, you're expected to give credit to those original sources. So citing and referencing, and liaison librarians help with that as well. We know the citing and referencing styles that you're expected to use, and we can provide help and support and advice for doing that, for using them. And also on citing and referencing, we've got EndNote, which is a reference management software, which as a Heriot-Watt student, you're entitled to 1 copy for free. And that will help by, if you're using Microsoft Word, then you can insert citations directly into your writing, and then it forms the reference list at the end for you. Or there's other ways that you can copy and paste and introduce like the fully formatted reference list into your work if you're not using Word. Say, for example, if you're a Mac user and you use Pages. And our support, like I say, we teach. So we come into classes and teach this stuff, being invited in by lecturers. We also run separate workshops outside of the lecture programme that you can just sign up to, which we'll talk about in a second. And also we have a lot of online guides and material as well that you can look through and work through in your own time. So each subject area has its own subject guide. So this is a link for the psychology one, and that's also a link for the guides and information about EndNote. So you can see more information about that if you want to. I should also mention as well that as a liaison librarian and also as learning advisor, before I move on too quickly, we're also available for one-to-one appointments as well. So if there's, if you're struggling to find information on your topic, then you can send us an email or something, and we can help by email. But you can also book an appointment to talk about the thing with your liaison librarian. And as a learning advisor, there's myself and another colleague, Astrid Farragher, who is a learning advisor. We're learning advisors for the UK campuses. Dubai and Malaysia also have their own learning advisors as well. And we as a team help with basically anything that's study skills related that isn't necessarily covered as part of your course. So you will get support on your course for these, but we provide additional support for things like academic writing and assignments, kind of how to write essays, how to write reports, reading and note making, so kind of strategic and speed reading, and how to make the most effective notes when you're reading and in lectures, exams and revision, study strategies, presentations, group work, the list goes on. And we have, like I say, online material for that as well. We do lessons and we go in and teach, and we're also available for one-to-one appointments as well. And I was talking as well about this kind of extra workshops that we run. There's a program that we use is called Skills Hub. So Skills Hub has a lot of guidance and information that's online. So we've got videos, interactive tutorials, but we also run live webinars on the subjects as well. And that's, again, things like academic writing, citing and referencing, study and lifestyle tips. So like I say, time management, study strategies, that sort of thing. And of course, there's the other services as well that we've mentioned. So student wellbeing covers, disability, student success advisors. And as we've already said, success advisors being recent graduates, they're a great compass for your students as well, to kind of help you find the right place if you need for help if you need it. There's also, the student union has its own advice hub as well, and you've got personal tutors, and there's a whole range of other services as well that I'm sure that I've not mentioned here as well. So that was everything I wanted to cover. If anyone has any questions, then I'm, like I say, more than happy to answer them.
Rachel, I think there was one question which you did kind of answer, but just to make sure there's nothing you want to add, it was just around the support system that helps you to learn the best study methods. So I know you mentioned all about your kind of different role, etc. Is that something that students just dip into as and when they want to? How does that work?
Yeah, pretty much exactly. So like I say, we've got the online materials there that you can look at in your own time, but we recognise as well that suddenly being presented with kind of, like I say, a lot of these videos and information, it can be difficult to know where to start. So like I say, that's where kind of when you first start, for example, and as many times as you like as a student, you can book an appointment with one of us, chat to you about, you know, your life, kind of what's you know, what your other commitments are, what your kind of study environment's like and stuff, and we can help you come up with the best strategies and suggestions that might work for you. Because like I say, we do all this generic stuff, but everybody learns differently and everyone is based in a different environment, and we're very aware of that, and we're very happy to, like I say, help people as much as we can.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm sure that's very helpful, and thank you very much for your presentation as well. That was really interesting.
You're very welcome.
So I'm going to take over now and just start talking a little bit about the entry requirements and how to apply. So this is kind of my section, the bit that I work on a little bit more, and hopefully this will answer some of your questions around this topic. But as we've said before, please feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to take some questions at the end as well. So this is specifically tailored towards psychology, so it's not about general applications necessarily. This is about our psychology programs and what we would look for in order to apply. So we've talked a lot about Heriot-Watt University, and you might be sitting there thinking, I want to go to university, but I need to kind of decide where I want to go, where I want to study. Obviously, we'd love to see you at Heriot-Watt, but we do have to make sure that you are considering all the different things that you might be interested in terms of what you want to go forward and do. So you might want to think about things like geographical location. So what kind of size is the HE institution that you're looking at? What kind of population? Do you want to go somewhere large or somewhere small? You might be thinking about accommodation. Is that something that's important to you? Sam mentioned our accommodation guarantee earlier on. Is that something that is particularly relevant? You also might want to think about the facilities. I'm not just thinking about those lovely psychology lab spaces that Dan mentioned, but also things like the sports facilities and the general other study facilities for students. I've mentioned reputation, but I've kind of put reputation in my little question mark brackets, just because reputation, it can come from so many different areas. So you might read like a top 10 university guide, or you might have people telling you about a particular university, but there's only really one way for you to know about a university, and that's for you to do your own research and see whether it feels right or not. So it's really important to take an opportunity to either visit if you can, if not, go to online open days and really get a feel for what the universities that you're applying to is all about. And also considerations might be to do with the different entry routes and the entry requirements that would be expected and what's available in terms of that. So I'll cover a bit more from the Heriot-Watt perspective for that as well. So we talk a lot about articulation, so I just wanted to highlight to you exactly what we mean by articulation and some of the different pathways through to the university. This is a kind of more general slide, not just specifically related to psychology. So you can see on the left of your screen that we would accept school qualifications, so things like Highers and advanced Highers to take you into a degree. But also on the right hand side, you can see some of the examples of some of the college qualifications that we would take, and hopefully this is what you would expect. So it would be things like your access course, particularly those swap access courses taking you into year 1, and then a HNC taking you into year 2. Now for some courses, the HND will also take you into year 3. I'll come on to in a moment how that works for psychology, because it is slightly different in terms of what we'd expect for you. But when we say articulation, we essentially mean directly moving from a HN qualification into an advanced year of a degree programme, and that's what we're talking about. So here's my little slide on the psychology entry requirements. Now I know that Dan already showed you a few of the entry requirements. This has got a little bit more detail about some of the college specific qualifications. There's a lot more information on our website, and obviously you can get in touch if there's anything you're unsure about. So this is the entry requirements for both the BSc Psychology and the BSc Psychology with Management. So both of those versions of the psychology course that we offer at Heriot-Watt. So if you are doing a SWAP access course, we would look for 3 Bs in the profile grades, and we accept a variety of different SWAP courses to take you into our psychology program. And as you probably already know, if you are a SWAP student, there are all the progression routes. All of those progression routes are agreed in advance by the university with SWAP, and the SWAP survey on the SWAP website will tell you exactly which courses can lead you into our psychology degree with those 3 Bs in the profile grades, and that will be year 1 entry. If you're doing a HN qualification, we would accept a HNC for year 2 entry, and we would look for an A in the graded units. And what we would like to see from you is most students come to us with a social sciences HNC, and we would expect you to do any available psychology and research methods or statistics units that you can. Those are absolutely key, particularly the research methods and statistics part. Somebody had asked a little question earlier on about whether we look at your highest qualifications or the previous qualifications if you've done a HNC. The answer is no, we don't. However, we would expect you to have done all the available research methods or statistics units to show us that you have got the general maths ability to be able to cope with psychology study at a higher level. So that's really important. If you're wanting to use your HNC to get into year 1, or if you've done the HND and you are wondering what requirements there would be from that to get you into year 2, then there are more details about those on the entry requirements page on the psychology pages of our website. As I say, with psychology and psychology with management, there's only a year 2 advanced entry option. You can't use a HND to get into year 3 because the HND the courses that are available are not specific enough to get you into that year 3 of our psychology courses. So your year 2 is your advanced entry option. So I want to move on just now to talk a little bit more about the application process. I'm hoping this is something that might be quite familiar to you already, so I won't spend too long covering it, but I'll just go over some of the specifics and some information about personal statements as well. So I'm sure you're all already aware that you apply through the UCAS portal to get to university, and universities would look for your academic background, your enthusiasm with the subject that you want to study, a range of different skills, experiences that you can demonstrate, and they want that demonstrated in a clear, concise personal statement. They also need to see a supportive and positive reference and evidence of any work experience where appropriate. So those are the things that universities would look for as a package to get you into the course that you would like to go for. So a few things about the UCAS application then. So the deadline for UCAS applications for most courses is the 15th of January. Now it's worth bearing in mind that colleges will have their own internal deadlines as well. So although the 15th of January is the final sort of cut-off deadline to get your application to UCAS to get out to the universities, there are a number of different parts of the process that you need to complete before your application will be sent off. And that includes getting your referee to add your reference. So that needs to happen before your UCAS application is sent off, before it gets to the university. So if you submit your UCAS application with all your bits completed to your college for your tutor to complete your personal to complete your reference on the evening of the 14th of January, that's probably not going to get in time. So what colleges will do is they'll set their own internal deadlines to make sure that they can get everything completed. So please do follow those, but be mindful that the sort of final deadline is the 15th of January. Again, you may already know, but you have a maximum of 5 different options that you can have on your UCAS form. So this can be different courses, different universities, a real combination depending on what you want to apply for. You don't have to use all 5 choices, but we would recommend putting a few down so that you've got a few different options that are open to you. The UCAS application is split into different sections. Personal details, the choices for where you want to study and what you want to study, your previous education history, your previous employment history, a personal statement space and a reference space. So it's split down into those sections and you would complete all of them except the reference part. So a lot of people ask about personal statements, so I wanted to come on in a little bit more detail about what kind of things you should be including. So first thing is really asking yourself why you want to study your chosen course, and avoid saying things like, oh, I'm really passionate about this subject, because that's the kind of thing that's really easy to say, but it doesn't really mean anything. So really start to explore below the surface as to why you're interested in the course that you have chosen. So you want to study psychology. What is it that interests you about it? You can also tell us about any work experience or subject specific experience that you have. Now, don't be thinking that we expect you to have been a psychologist to apply for psychology. We certainly don't. You couldn't be without a degree anyway. But what we're looking for is we're looking to see if you've got anything that you can offer us in terms of any experience or knowledge about that particular area. So what reading have you done around the subject? Have you read any specific specialist journal articles, for example, kept up to date with current research? Have you worked anywhere where you've been working with people, where you've been helping, supporting them, maybe with mental health or something like that? There's loads of different things that you could bring in for that sort of part of your personal statement to tell us a bit more about, that helps show your understanding of the subject that you're going for. We'd also love to see some more about your transferable skills with specific examples. So when we say transferable skills, that's things like your teamwork, working to deadlines, working under pressure, all the things that you'll require as a student. So it's a little bit like the kind of stuff that you get asked to complete on a job application. So you can approach it in that way as well, where you give us your skills and give us some examples of how and when you've done those things. Another thing to include could be your future plans. So where would you like your study to take you? So for example, psychology, are you planning on going on to work as a psychologist and doing further study? Or are you looking to study this because you'd be quite interested in that psychology with management option? So you could go into HR within business and working with people. What is your motivation and what are your future plans? Don't worry, we won't hold you to those future plans. It's just to show us that you've thought beyond the degree course, and that's really important. Just keep the content positive and relevant to the course you're applying for, and you won't go far wrong. So what kind of things should you maybe try and avoid then in your personal statement? So poor wording and grammar, it sounds really obvious, but it's definitely worth making sure that your personal statement reads well, and don't just reach for the thesaurus if you want to find alternative words, because sometimes it can mean that your stuff ends up making no sense. We definitely say avoid quotes from other people, because no matter how individual you think it is, I can absolutely guarantee that somebody else will have used that quote before. And also, it's a personal statement, so it's personal about you and from you. I've already mentioned the next one, so overuse of cliches and the word passionate. Try and explore below the surface of just being interested in the subject. What is it about it that interests you? Please do avoid negative comments or excuses. However, when I say that, that is not to say that you should shy away from you overcoming any adversity that you may have had to overcome in your study or in your life more generally. So you are more than welcome to tell us about your journey, but what we don't want to see is, we don't want to see, oh, I never did this because of that. We want to see you, how you have made the most of your situation and what you've done to take yourself forward. Obviously, trying to be funny can be a bit of a dodgy area, because not every admissions officer has got your sense of humour, so it might be worth avoiding that. Avoid irrelevant personal facts. Use what we would call the so what rule. I'll come on to a couple of examples of this in a moment. But basically, the so what rule is where when you read your personal statement back and you have a look what you've written, always ask yourself for everything that you've written, so what? So why have I told this person this information? How is that adding to my application? And it's a good way to edit down your personal statement and get rid of any unnecessary details. And the bottom one, hopefully fairly obvious, plagiarism, lies or exaggeration. Don't copy your personal statement from anywhere else and don't lie to us in there, because it doesn't usually ending well. And all personal statements are run through plagiarism software to make sure that they're not too similar to any personal statements that already exist. So I've got a couple of personal statement examples here. So I'll give you a moment just to have a look at both of these and maybe decide in your own mind which one you think is maybe a little bit better than the other. So hopefully you're having a little scan of these and you're spotting some of the things that I'm going to point out to you. So with the top one, there is lots and lots of information there. And personal statements are all about information, obviously. However, this is one where somebody has just pretty much just listed everything that they can think of that they've ever done. So I don't know when some of these things were. So a UK maths challenge, that might have been at primary school for all we know. Some of these things, how relatable are they to what this person might be applying for? And they've got that kind of negative excuse at the end where it's everything was postponed because of the current circumstances, so I couldn't do anything. So, you know, this is some interesting things, but what I'd say is I'd want to know more. So the bottom personal statement, although it's talking about DJing, which you might be thinking, okay, is that the best example that I can give? However, this is somebody who has given a lot more detail and has started talking about some of those key skills by using something that they have done. So they've given some examples of things like time management, working under pressure, all through an example of something that they have been doing as a job. So I think that the bottom one, although it's maybe not necessarily what you would expect to see as an example of something, okay, well, this is a great academic example or what have you, it's really, really well done in terms of the way they've managed to bring in some of those different key skills to within that personal statement as well. And these are just sections from a couple of personal statements. These are not obviously the full thing, but it's just to give you a bit more of an idea of the sort of stuff we might look for. So a few more examples then of genuine personal statements that we have received, and maybe to illustrate some of the don't do's that we have described. So the top one, little bit of too much passion there, so a little bit too much, too over the top, maybe not just the kind of thing that we're looking for. The middle one, with some information about windsurfing and windsurfing boards and getting an older board, so this person might be able to learn that. This would be my example of the so what rule. So if you're including something like this in your personal statement, then please make sure that you are relating it back to something that we would be interested in knowing more about. So making sure that if you're telling us about your hobbies and the other things that you do, how does that relate to you as a student? So do you do those things and you balance them alongside your studies? So you're showing us your time management skills, for example. It's got to be something that is helping with your application rather than just information for information's sake. And then probably always my favourite one at the bottom, yeah, you've got it. It's one to always check your spelling, because I'm pretty sure that that person meant to say a strong grip of the English language. So 5 top tips then for personal statements. Remember the 47 line, 4,000 character limit. So you've not got much space, so make it all count and all relevant. Give examples of your own experiences. It doesn't matter where they come from. It could be home life, it could be work life, it could be college. It's totally up to you. You've got good experiences from across all of the different things that you have done and are doing just now. Try to avoid starting every sentence with I. I know it's really difficult when you're writing a personal statement about you. I've done this, I'm interested in that, but it does help to make your personal statement read a little bit better and seem a bit more professional as well. And make sure, the bottom one, very important, leave yourself enough time to do everything. So don't leave it till the last minute. I am the world's worst procrastinator, but please make sure that you're not like me and that you leave yourself enough time to do everything and complete all of the things you need to do. Just a little bit on references then, because I mentioned that at the beginning. So as I've said before, an academic reference is part of your application. You are free to discuss with your college lecturer if there's anything you would like to be included in your reference. So if you think that something's relevant or you think that something's not relevant and you don't want it mentioned, then feel free to have that conversation with your lecturer. They're probably going to be the person that will be doing your reference. Extenuating circumstances or adverse situations impacting on your study can be included in your reference and your personal statement as well. So remember what I said about negative stuff. It's not about not including the things that you've overcome or difficulties that you've had, but it's just about avoiding kind of excuses for things. And make sure, as I said earlier, to leave your referee enough time to complete your reference to make sure that it's the best that it can be. A few key dates to kind of start summing up with my bit of presentation then. So the top one is about medicine, dentistry, vet med courses, and if you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge. So don't panic thinking that you've missed the deadline. The January the 15th is the one that is most relevant, I'd say, to the majority of people, and definitely for your psychology courses. So that is the one where you need to get everything into UCAS by that point. The 31st of March is when universities will aim to have made their decisions for all applications received by the 15th of January. So chances are you're probably going to be trying to submit your application before Christmas, and universities will aim to have their decisions to you by the 31st of March. So you've got a little bit of waiting to do. So don't worry if some universities come back to you really quickly and others take a little bit more time. It doesn't mean to say that they're going to say no. It just means that their processes of making decisions are slightly different. The 5th of May is a really important date, and UCAS should remind you of this, but it's just to give you a heads up that you actually have to go on and you have to respond to your offers. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, okay, I'm getting these offers, this is great, I'm very happy, I've got an offer from my top university that I definitely wanted to go to. Fab, but you do also need to kind of accept that offer. So you need to go onto the system before the 5th of May and reply to your offers. So pick one firm institution choice and one insurance, and then decline all the others. If you don't do that by the 5th of May, then all of your offers that you've been made will be declined by default. So you don't want to be in that position. So make sure that you are keeping up to date with what you need to do at different times. And then on the 10th of August in 2021 will be when clearing will start. So if you're still looking for a place at that point, this is the time when you can get in touch with different universities and speak to them to see if they've got any places remaining as well. So that's what clearing is all about. So that's the end of my kind of formal presentation. This is the opportunity for you to ask me any questions that you might have. Just before we go into questions and to give you a bit of time to type anything that you might want to ask, we've got on the slide here the email address for me and the WP team. So just wp@hw.ac.uk. Feel free to drop us an email with any questions that you might have. It would be also great if you wanted to visit our colleges pages on our website. So they are either at the bit.ly link just there, or you can just search for colleges and mature students on our website and it will bring you up the pages that we've got with information for you. And also just for the psychology specific stuff, There's loads of good resources in the visit section of our website, as well as the general sort of psychology pages. So if you go to that web address in the visit section and look at the psychology stuff, there's some interesting bits and pieces in there for you to have a little look at and explore as well. So what I will do is I will come out of my presentation and I will see if Sam has any questions that have come in for us while I've been chatting.
Yep, we do indeed. We've got a few questions. So the first one is asking if you're in an access course but are not part of SWAP, are they still able to apply?
Okay, absolutely. So yes, absolutely, you're still able to apply. If you're not on a SWAP course, then what we won't have is we won't have those set progression routes already kind of in place. So what that means is that we will need details from you as to what units and things you've covered as part of that course. So we will need further detail from you about kind of what you've covered, what kind of things that you've done. And you can either do that in advance by getting in touch with us, like emailing your stuff over to the WP address, or obviously as part of your application as well, because you'll be putting all that information onto your UCAS form as well. But absolutely more than welcome for any access course to apply. But if it's not a SWAP course, then I can't tell you upfront exactly what we would look for. We would need to look at what you're doing and make a decision based on that. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Another question is asking about higher grades and if they have to have all higher grades attained in the same year.
Okay, so if you are somebody who is doing hires rather than a SWAP course or an access course or a HNC, then no, you don't need to do all your hires in 1 year. So if you are looking at those 4 hires grades to get you into first year, that can come from more than one sitting. So you're more than welcome to have taken some over S5 and S6, or if you're doing some additional hires at college, we would be able to look at all of those as well. Obviously, the more sittings that you've taken those hires over, then the more we'll have to look at kind of your study ability in terms of different subjects studied at the same time. But as long as you've got kind of 2 or 3 hires that you've been studying at once, or you've been maybe balancing studying hires with working, then absolutely we'd be able to accept and look at any that you have been studying over a couple of different sittings.
Okay, great, thank you. We have another question, which is asking about accommodation prices.
Cool. Okay, so all of our accommodation prices are on our website. At the moment for 2020, we have got one sort of less type of accommodation that is available. So normally we would have accommodation which has shared bathrooms, but at the moment, because of the current pandemic situation, we have decided to not offer our shared bathroom accommodation just for kind of safety reasons. So we have got all ensuite accommodation which is advertised on our website just at the moment, and the prices range from £144 per week to £179 per week. So £144 per week would be for ensuite accommodation, but in our traditional halls, and the right up to the £179 per week, that would be more your either your studio flat kind of accommodation or your contemporary kind of student accommodation. So the price that you pay kind of reflects, I suppose, really the sort of facilities that you get in. There's a lot more detail on the website, and obviously as we get a little bit closer to the start of next term, we'll also know whether we are able to open up the option for the shared bathroom accommodation and what the prices for that would be as well, because that would obviously be the cheaper sort of option if that is something that would be of interest.
Okay, I think that is all the questions that we have at the moment in the chat. We give it another minute just to see if anyone else quickly types something in.
As we said before as well, if you don't get a chance to type in your question just now, then you can always just drop us an email. So nice and easy to remember, wp@hw.ac.uk, and we can try and answer any questions. Similarly, if your question is a bit longer, a bit more complex, something that we might not be able to answer directly this evening, then that is an easy way to get in touch with us and ask any questions that you've got. But if nothing else is coming in, I will hand back over to Sam just to kind of finish us off. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Pat, and also to Rachel and Dan earlier as well. It's a really interesting event, and hopefully that has inspired you to maybe consider studying psychology at Heriot-Watt in the future. As Pat said, if you have any more questions, then please don't hesitate to email us with those questions. And there is lots of more information on the web pages as well, and a recording of this event will also go up on the web pages, so if you want to look back at anything, you can. But thank you very much for coming along this evening, and thank you to our speakers, and I'll sign off now. Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.